Well, Israel has been expanding its military operation both in central and western Rafah. The military says that it is now in full control of the border area with Egypt, which is known as the Philadelphi Corridor. The area is 14 kilometers long and intended to be a demilitarized buffer zone running along the border between Gaza and Egypt. Let's go to Hani Mahmoud. He joins us now live from Deir el-Balah in central Gaza. Hani, so what more can you tell us about the Israeli army's movements in southern Gaza?
Yes, well, just judging from the patterns of attacks and the movement of the Israeli military and its occupying forces on the ground along the eastern part of Rafah city, that's near the border, as well as the Egyptian Rafah border, that's the Philadelphi Corridor, all the way the 13 kilometers from the eastern part all the way to the coastal road. That's the area the Israeli military. This is not the first time it's stated it's going to be demilitarized or it's part of the buffer zone. It was stated at the initial weeks of this genocidal war, but what it does really on the ground, it's eating up more of the area of Rafah city. Is similar to what's going on in the northern part and along the eastern area. So far, we're looking at a map that shows with the buffer zone that is being established by the Israeli military is eating up about 16% of the total area of the Gaza Strip. And right now in Rafah city, this area, we're looking at least a 1 kilometer depth northern the Philadelphia Corridor into Rafah city, which means the vast majority of the residential buildings, the public facilities on that particular area, including the schools, the UNRWA facilities, and the residential buildings, the mosque, all are going to be destroyed in order for that area to be demilitarized. What that means is more enforced displacement, that what people have been so frustrated about. Everything is happening right now with these buffer zone or demilitarized area feeds into permanent displacement for people who will not be able to get back to these areas, whether in the southern part of Rafah city, the Philadelphia Corridor and the areas surrounding it, or the eastern part of the Gaza Strip, all the way from Rafah to the city of Beit Hanun, that's further northern part. And this is the arrangement that the Israeli military has been pushing for. All of its sentiment and narrative has been endorsed to get to this point where they have not only the military control, but also to empty the area and make it uninhabitable from its own residents.
Right, Hani, as you've been describing, what is the biggest dilemma for people to escape the fighting is they're now being forced to leave the south and return back to the north, but fighting in the north is also continuing.
Yes, and this just happened as the Israeli military in the past hours, early hours of this morning, started to widen its military maneuvers and operation in the Zaytun neighborhood. That's at the eastern part of Gaza, a densely populated neighborhood, and it has been invaded several times. In fact, this time it's the fourth time, and already the large part of this neighborhood has been destroyed in terms of its public facilities, its infrastructure, the residential homes. Literally, people within the past weeks have been going back to more of a wasteland, similar to the scenario that happened in Khan Yunis. We're looking at an area that has become increasingly uninhabitable, given that all social services and all means of life have been destroyed. While this is happening in the Zaytun neighborhood in eastern Gaza, the Israeli military announced its tactical withdrawal from Jabalia refugee camp all the way to the edges of the area. That's between Tel el-Zatar and the city of Beit Lahia and the further northern part of the Gaza Strip. And in doing so, it continues encircling Al-Awda hospital that has been under military siege for the past 14 days. There are injuries, there are patients, there are people who are inside unable to leave to safer area, unable to get whatever necessities of terms of supplies, water, food, or medical supplies to that hospital. So this is not a full withdrawal. It's tactical by the Israeli military. It means they can get back to the refugee camp at any time, given that what it created on the ground, the new routes and the new roads established by the Israeli military, gives it an upper hand in maneuvering into the refugee. Despite all of this, we still have these confirmed reports of ongoing clashes, the ongoing confrontation between Palestinian fighting groups on the ground, whether in the northern part, in Jabalia and the northern part of the Strip, or Rafah city.
Okay, thank you for that update. Hani Mahmoud, there for us in Deir el-Balah in central Gaza. Joining us now on set is Tamer Qarmout, Associate Professor of Public Policy at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Good to speak to you again, Tamer. I want to get a sense from you as to where we are, do you think, in terms of the war? Because we now have the Israeli military seizing control of this Philadelphi Corridor, which is this entire length of the Gaza border with Egypt. And despite everything that we've been hearing from the international community in recent days, they seem to have deepened their ground invasion into Rafah.
Malin, correct. I think the taking over the Philadelphia Corridor signals for a beginning of a new stage. And I think this is also related to the statements we're hearing from the Israeli government officials that this war will take months or maybe years to come. The Philadelphia Corridor was a red line by the Egyptian government because the Egyptians were very concerned and they were threatening that this would change the arrangements over the Camp David peace agreement they had with Israel. So it was more or less like a red line that Israel has already crossed again. So Israel has been crossing all the red lines set by the US, the international community, even by its neighbor Egypt now. And I think the Israelis are more or less, they have upper hand in this war. I mean, I don't see any sincere willingness by the US to stop the Israelis or change the discourse of their behavior or action. And my fear and my concern, this signals a new stage of probably a long presence of Israeli troops in Gaza, reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, cutting it into cantons, having full control over all the border crossings, including Egypt, isolating Gaza. Something similar to the West Bank, maybe at a later stage they will reintroduce the A, B, C areas, And I think they're there at this stage.
Meanwhile, the suffering for the people of Gaza continues. Another warning today from the UN about aid deliveries into Gaza have dropped by 2/3 since Israel's move into Rafah. And we heard from Hani there, people just going back and forth between the north and the south, trying to escape the fighting. But the fighting is now everywhere.
Correct. And also you hear from the Israeli officials, again, statements, they don't hide it. I mean, that they want to more or less to corner most of Gaza's population in this narrow strip of Al-Mawasi and Khan Yunis, and there will be no return for Gazans to the north unless Hamas releases the Israeli captives. And so they're crushing the people, it's torture for the people. And I think it's brutality at its best, and sadly, yes, the Israelis are more or less having an upper hand. I mean, there is no one who's really able to stopping them. What the Americans are really caring about now is for Israel to have a clear plan for the day after, as if, again, they're implicitly approving the reoccupation of Gaza. They don't have a problem with Israel having control in Gaza, but they want to know how Israel is going to govern Gaza and with whom. And again, that's another scandal. Palestinians don't deserve this. Again, to remind your viewers, it's the Israeli occupation. Occupation is the root causes of all these problems. We don't need another reoccupation of the Gaza Strip. If the Israelis get rid of Hamas, Palestinians will keep resisting, whether it's Hamas or someone else. And sadly, the US is not there. Yes, there are good news coming from many countries. We see this wave of recognition. That's very good, and that's a step in the right direction. But we're still far away from reaching a fair settlement for this conflict.
Okay, good to speak to you. Tamer Qarmout, Professor of Public Policy at Doha Institute for Graduate Studies.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.